30-minute episode of the Atheist Experience, at least for a little while. The Public Access Studio has changed their guidelines and restricted all shows to 1-hour slots. So for the upcoming season, we will be moving, we'll be staying at the same time slot, but we'll be moving to the bigger studio, which we're hoping will solve some of the technical problems related to calls and audio. We'll see what happens. And we will be reduced to a 1-hour slot, which means I'll be shortening the announcements dramatically. We'll be relying on banners across the bottom to direct people to the website for more information. We will not remind everybody every week about everything that's going on. And we may shorten up the topic section of the show in order to get to calls. This also means that we're going to try to shorten calls in the future. And I don't mean that, everybody gets 20 seconds to make their case and then, we move on to somebody else. It's just that we will probably stop rambling calls or lengthy discussions a lot quicker than we have in the past. We're optimistic that this change to an hour won't be devastating for the show, and there are some people who think that may actually, force some changes that improve the show quality overall. And we're looking into possibly getting 2 1-hour slots in future seasons, so we'll see how that goes. As we're moving to the other studio, the phone number will change. So this is the last week that the phone number, which they're going to put up in a second right over here, which is 512-477-2288. This is the last week that number will be valid at all. And the next week, October 3rd, there will not be a show. We're being preempted by the Mormons, something that happens every 6 months. So the next live show in the main studio will actually be October 10th. So we got this week's show at 90 minutes, no show next week, and then a show on October 10th. The announcements to get out of the way really quick. We want to congratulate Dave Silverman on being elected as American Atheist new president. Ed Buckner is retired, and Dave's just been announced, and we're looking forward to working more closely with American Atheists in the future, maybe getting Dave down here on the show to talk some, and other endeavors, so stay tuned for that. The October 8th through the 10th in the Dallas area is the Texas Free Thought Convention. You can go to texasfreethoughtconvention.com for more information. October 16th, I will be speaking at CFI in Tampa. November 16th, I will be at UMBC for a debate. We'll get you more details as we get closer to that date. October 2nd is the ACA's blood drive, and that closes out all of the announcements that I had.
Awesome.
So like 6 minutes and 7 minutes.
Something occurred to me that the 1-hour shows are also will be helpful for those people who have only recently discovered this show and are trying to watch their way through the backlog.
Yeah.
They will not have such a hard struggle to catch up for a while.
So we've got callers already on the lines, ready to go. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to mention quickly.
No, let's go with calls.
We're jumping right in.
Calls are fun.
Let's get the new model on the road. We've got Sean in Fresno. How are you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Sean.
Cool. All right. I have evidence for a spaceless, timeless, intelligent, immaterial creator. My evidence is not a faith-based assumption or personal experience, and I think all the prior theist callers you've had are stupid. They are bad representatives of Christianity. So I'm going to present you guys with some evidence for a creator, and I'm going to use the law of causality to do that. First thing, second law of thermodynamics says that the universe is running out of energy. It cannot be eternal. We know that the universe is expanding, it's getting bigger, so we know that at one point it was all together. Robert Wilson and Arnold Pentheus in 1965 discovered remnant heat left over from the initial Big Bang explosion. They discovered a Nobel Prize from that. So we know that the universe must have had a beginning. We know that at one point it was all together and it exploded out of nothing. Einstein's theory of general relativity says space, matter, and time came into existence together. Now, it's because something exists. Something must have always existed, and if the universe is eternal, then fine. The universe is what has always existed, but we know the universe is not eternal. It must have had a beginning.
Can I cut in here for a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
something has always existed. It's called the universe. And we can say this because time began with the universe. There's no point to talking about something having always existed that predates the beginning of time.
Yeah, when you start talking about relativity and entropy, and these are the physical properties of our universe, and you can't extrapolate beyond the beginning because there is no beyond the beginning.
Okay, I don't agree with you. The universe has not always existed. It's been proven.
Well,
you just admitted
we didn't.
Thermodynamics.
You just acknowledged that time began when the universe began, correct?
Yes, I did.
So there's no before time. The concept of before time is a direct contradiction. Before is an application of time.
So you agree with me that something must have always existed, and you're saying that the universe has always existed?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
Well, I'm not necessarily, but go ahead.
Well, that's what I said, and my point is, you agree with me that that time and the universe came into existence simultaneously.
Yeah, I'm saying the
So
universe
what
had
I'm
a
saying is the
beginning.
idea of always only goes back to the appearance of the universe and the appearance of time. Before there was time, it's nonsensical to talk about anything that came before. So during the entire period when there's been time, there's been the universe. The problem I think you're trying to address doesn't exist.
Okay, I'm saying the universe couldn't have always existed. It can't be eternal because the
Why
law
not?
of thermodynamics says it's running out of energy. It can't be infinite. It can't be eternal. The universe must have had a beginning.
No, and in fact, you're wrong there too, because the current understanding of the fate of the universe is that entropy is having its way, and the universe is expanding and spreading out, and energy is dispersing, and there's going to be this thing called the heat death, where stuff still exists, but the energy is played out. And that will be the eternal state of the universe as it continues to expand.
Okay, cool. So I actually lied to your producer and to the chat room. I'm actually an atheist. I'm just playing God's advocate.
Well, we don't really need that.
Do you guys know who Frank Turek is?
I've heard the name, but it's not.
He's like Richard Dawkins. He travels around the world presenting or trying to present arguments for the existence of God, and he's coming to my college campus tomorrow. So I just basically read his cosmological argument off his website, and I wanted to hear your guys' response to it because I wanted to have some ammo to ask him some questions and debate with him tomorrow.
So we did your homework for you.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
Sweet.
but
So
please
he's
do
wrong
yourself
to
a
say
favor.
The universe had a beginning. It didn't have a beginning. It's eternal.
Do yourself a favor and double check the things we've said. We're not physicists. We're passing on our layman's understanding, right? And this guy is liable to be able to catch you if you pass on anything we said and we have any of the technical details wrong, right? And then use that to shoot you down. So please take what we've said as sort of a starting point.
And the last thing, I'd recommend, if you haven't already watched it, Lawrence Krauss's lecture on A Universe from Nothing will give a better understanding of some of this. But also, in the future, you don't actually have to lie to get through.
Oh, okay. I mean, just because you guys are getting less and less theist callers, more
Well,
and
that
more
doesn't mean
fans
we want
just trying
fake
to give you
theist
kudos.
callers.
So I thought it would be nice to pretend I'm a theist and try to argue for God.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
not so much. But thanks for the call.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'll save that for another time. We got Juan in Hillsborough. How are you?
Hi, guys. Fan of the show.
Are you a real fan of the show, or are you a theist calling in pretending to be a fan of
I'm
the
an
show
atheist.
to trip us up?
Anyway,
Okay.
we'll take it at your word, Juan. Go ahead.
Okay, so I argue with theists quite a bit at work. I work in an engineering company, so these guys aren't, dim-witted. And I made the claim that I think that the Gospels are fiction in whole or in part, so I'm making the claim. And to prove it, I took the birth narrative of Jesus in Matthew and Luke, and in 2 columns I wrote down the story line by line and showed it to them. And first told them that there's no historical record of the slaughter of the infants or the census of Augustus. And then they looked at it and said, well, you can't use the argument from silence. Both things occurred. It's just that one guy chose not to give the details of the other. And I'm just looking at it and saying, am I going crazy here? Is 2 plus 2 do not equal 4? Because they're looking at it and saying 2 plus 2 equals a caret. It just doesn't make sense to me.
It's not. It would be wrong. I mean, there are things that one gospel may mention that another may not, and it would be wrong to say that this is fiction because one person recorded and another didn't, because that's not a contradiction. It's an omission. If you identify an actual contradiction, like you would, for example, in the genealogies, which some apologists think they have some reconciliation for, that would be a thing. But what you're saying is the Bible authors, the gospel authors, are recording an event that nobody else bothered to record at all. And it's not just limited to the slaughter of the innocents, which some people dismiss as being largely irrelevant because for some reason they don't think there were enough under 2-year-old babies for Herod to kill for it to make any kind of news. But you can go even further to the rising of the Jewish zombies that entered into Jerusalem during the crucifixion. It's not an argument from silence at all. What it is you're saying your Bible records something which is extraordinary, and nobody else seems to have any record of this, and therefore your piece of evidence is insufficient to justify believing the claim on its own.
Yeah, it sounds to me like there may be a failure to communicate. It sounds like the Christians are expecting you to come up with an argument for why they should stop believing. And what you think you're doing is you're showing that there's no reason for them to have ever started believing. And it's different, right? They're saying, we're going to keep believing until you can find the smoking gun, right? And you're saying you shouldn't have even started unless there was a body.
Right. I mean, I'm just comparing the documents themselves. I'm not making any claims, just saying that I believe that parts of this thing are fiction.
Yeah. Right. No, I think...
And you're basically agreeing with him, aren't you, Matt?
No, I'm agreeing with you. I think parts of them are fiction. It's just that when you mentioned the argument from silence, which is it's a common problem where somebody would say, okay, this gospel mentions something and this other gospel doesn't. That's not what you're doing, right? Or
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
No, then you would be wrong to do that. To say that because gospel A mentions something and gospel B doesn't mention it, that therefore it's a fiction, because there's no requirement that every single recording of events contain every bit of information. The correct thing to do is to compare the event that's recorded by the gospel and compare it to other sources to see if we can find it anywhere else. If there's just this one source or these two sources that are reporting something extraordinary, then that's insufficient. But if Matthew mentions the slaughter of the innocents and Luke doesn't, that's not a contradiction, an omission, a failure to mention it. Now, it's the type of thing that we would think, might be recorded, but it is not and I agree that there's a problem that one gospel is mentioning something that seems significant and another isn't, but that in and of itself is not a demolishing to the claim.
But I mean, in one narrative, they originally live in Bethlehem, in the other one, they originally live in Nazareth. So how can both of those things be true?
That's not an argument from silence. So on that, the Christians who are accusing you of that are wrong.
Yeah. And
okay.
But there are, I just want to make sure that, there are incredibly easy apologetic responses to that. And it's one of the reasons why you don't hear me mentioning that particular issue on the TV show, because it's not going to have any impact on anybody. Because all any preacher's got to do is say, well, I was born in Kansas City, but I grew up in St. Louis. And so two people who do a biography of me, one of them may choose to start my life in Kansas City, and another may choose to start it in St. Louis. They're not incorrect. They're starting from two different points. Now, I agree that the biblical narrative is more contradictory to that, but that sort of apologetic response is going to make, it's going to knock some of the teeth out of what you're trying to do, which is why I always encourage people to go for, the more hard-hitting, this idea that zombies got up and walked into Jerusalem, is a little stronger, I think.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Juan.
Bye.
And that there's no independent,
Right.
extra-biblical records of that.
Or of any of it.
Right.
And the fact that they perhaps...
Well, you can pick any, really eyebrow-raising incident from the Bible and make a stronger case that, wow, you would think reports would have gotten back to Rome about the zombie invasion.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that I think other ways that the Bible can be used against itself is that, you've got Jesus doing miracles and in front of like a crowd, and there are some who believe and some who don't believe. Now,
yeah.
The Bible is already admitting that there are some people who are just not going to believe even if they see, but it could be the case that these were accurate reports of something happened and some people believed it and some didn't. And
Right.
so what does that tell us? How is that any different from any other claim?
I had an email exchange with a guy recently who argued that, he was talking about some religious figure from like 80 years ago or something. I can't remember the guy's name, but his argument was that this guy really was a prophet because he healed all these people, and we know he healed all these people because he did it in front of all these, a bunch of unbelievers. And they still didn't believe after they'd seen it, but they had seen it. I go, if it wasn't impressive enough to change the minds of the unbelievers, then how is that an argument? And his response was, well,
reported, exaggerated, misreported, misremembered. I mean, I can pull my finger off and put it back on, and I did it in front of everybody. But how many people believe that I actually pulled the tip of my finger off? I mean, nobody with any sense. At one time, that would have been impressive.
Oh, but see, Matt, those people who cannot believe that you had the power to actually pull the tip of your finger off, those people were not meant to believe.
Yeah. I didn't grant them with the generous blessing of faith to accept that. But
Yeah.
All right, let's take some more. We got Terry in Boise. How are you?
Take some more. We got Terry in Boise. How are you? Take some more. We got Terry in Boise. How are you?
He's
Well,
got us on a loop.
How are you? He's
well,
got us
okay,
on a loop.
bye.
Bye, Terry. Sorry. Try calling back. We've got Corey in Mississippi. Hello?
Corey?
Well,
Hello?
Yes, hello there.
Hey, I'm sorry, guys. Your channel actually does not. I just changed the channel, and you guys actually came out on TV. It said something about Atheist Experience or something like that. I just want to know what you guys were pretty much talking about. You guys are no longer on TV, though. That's what I'm looking at right now.
we're on
Oh,
TV.
that's what you guys are. Yeah.
Studio's had problems. We've been on and off. It keeps clicking
Oh,
to some other stuff.
well,
The stream, too?
apparently the stream too.
You're back on now.
This guy's in Missouri? Are you in Missouri, Corey?
Hang on a sec, Corey.
No, I think you guys have the wrong guy. This is Oscar. I'm calling from Austin.
You're calling from Austin. For some
Yeah.
reason, it says Mississippi. So, okay, so you're saying watching live in Austin, we're going on and off.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, but now you guys are back on track.
All right.
Well, we're recording it all anyway, so what do you got for us?
What are you guys pretty much talking about? I just heard callers talking about.
We're just taking calls.
Why was that correct?
We're just taking calls.
This is an atheist show. We talk about religion.
Religion. Do you guys believe in religion or no?
No.
At all?
Well, I mean, I believe religions exist, but I mean,
Oh yeah, I know
We're
that.
not.
You guys-
We don't believe in gods. That's what an atheist is a person that doesn't believe in gods.
How come?
Well, why should we?
Why should you?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, pretty much, I just wanted to see you guys. So you guys don't believe in Jesus or none of that, right?
Well, as Matt was just explaining, it's possible that there was an historical figure on whom those stories are based, but the actual tangible evidence of his existence is pretty sketchy.
I don't believe anybody performed miracles or that they are a god or the son of a god or anything like that.
Okay. Do you guys believe in people? What do you guys think about humans as far as how we were created? You guys
We weren't created.
Huh?
Humans weren't created.
What happened?
We've evolved
How do you know that?
because we have evidence.
You have other people just thinking of what they're doing, right?
No.
They're having theories
No.
about how humans became from apes. Is that correct?
Well, we share
That's
common
evolution that
ancestry.
you guys actually think about, right?
We share common ancestor with every living thing on the planet. Apes are some of our closest ancestors, and this has been demonstrated by not only the fossil record, but by genetics. I mean, evolution's a done deal. Anybody who's still arguing that evolution isn't supported by evidence just doesn't know how to open their eyes.
Are you a scientist?
Am I a scientist? No.
Do you have a bachelor's or a master's on that?
No. Do I need one?
Do you have to?
That's why I just asked you.
Basically,
Are you
actually believe in
Corey?
what
Are you a
people actually
theologian?
tell you.
Are you a theologian, Corey?
No. Pretty much, I just wanted to see, because basically when you read the Bible, you're pretty much thinking of what other people are telling you, right?
When I've read the Bible, I've read it at face value.
Okay. But the thing is, ever since you're young or since you're little, you pretty much are being taught that there's a God, his name is Jesus or Maria Guadalupe or whatever type of religious, right?
Sure.
Okay. Well, if you're not a scientist, but you believe in evolution, but you're not a scientist at all, you actually just believe in other people's what they're thinking.
No.
Hypothesis,
I
right?
understand what science is and how it works and how it's done, and that's why I take it seriously when scientists say that they've discovered a thing.
Not only that, but the evidence is there for anybody to assess and understand for themselves. Have you never been to a natural history museum?
I never have, but like I said, I'm not a scientist myself. If I just go to school and they're teaching me, this is how back since you're let's say 1993 or 1991, the scientists thought there was 8 planets, right? That's what we were being taught. That's what you guys were actually being taught yourselves.
Excuse me?
Sure.
How many planets are there now?
Well, there were 9, and then there were 8, and now there's 9 again. But that's because they changed the class. Things that once we have understood them to a certain degree, what it would take to overturn them is just absurd and worldview altering. It's not like people are just arbitrarily making up things and saying, hey, this is the new science fad. They're based on evidence, and science changes its positions based on evidence.
Every single time, but they do change every...
Corey, why is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing. What I'm trying to
Then why
say
are you
is
raising it up?
Basically, what I'm trying to say is, if you're not a scientist, you're just believing what other people are telling you.
No, we explained to you why we take science seriously. You don't have to be a scientist to understand that what scientists do makes sense, works, and is important.
Okay. Do you guys believe in extraterrestrials?
I think it's incredibly unlikely that there are not intelligent living things somewhere out in space. But do I think any of them have landed on the Earth? No.
Okay, that's good. Okay, that's all I pretty much wanted to know. What do you guys think after people die?
They're dead.
I know they're dead. So you don't believe in sin at all, right? That's basically what you guys are telling me?
Don't believe what?
Sin. Basically, if you die, you were a bad person, you go to hell.
Okay. Sin is a set of rules written down by the followers of a particular religion. Since we don't follow that particular religion, we don't agree necessarily that that set of rules of right and wrong. We have an idea of what's right and what's wrong. We just don't get it from that.
But as far as afterlife and heaven and hell, no, there's no reason to believe any of that. Matter of fact, there's good reason to disbelieve it and believe that it's false.
Okay. Well, I'm not too much into religion either, but something that I do believe in is basically, God is basically somebody who is more better than you, or in every single way. You know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say? This is just the word that
Superman.
people are just trying to say. It's just, it's God.
So
what is God?
That's not our job. You tell us what God is, and we'll look at that and tell you whether we believe that there is such a thing.
Okay. All right. Well, good luck, you guys.
Sure.
Thanks for your call, Corey. That was actually kind of fun.
God is the Supermensch. We've got Pat in Pasadena. How are you?
Pat, are you there?
Hello. Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Pat.
How are you today?
We're good.
Good. I just wanted to call in. I had several issues. I'm a Christian, but I'm not the Christian I'm not the type of Christian that the traditional Christian.
So you're not like I used to be.
I don't know how you used to be.
Okay.
Good answer.
I do believe in God, but I don't believe that Jesus is God.
Okay.
I believe that Jesus is part of God, like we all are, and I don't believe that God is a person. I believe in my meditations, I've come to realize, because I was born and raised Baptist traditional religion, but it didn't make sense.
Me too.
And stuff has to make sense. And when I started meditating, I entered into the energy that's inside of us. And it's like a whole world that's inside of us. But it's deep, deep, deep inside of us.
Yeah, okay.
And after realizing that, I realized that it's all energy.
Okay, stop.
Uh-huh.
How do you know any of this? You're meditating and you say you entered the energies that are deep inside of us. That's nonsensical until you explain it.
Okay. Well, I left my body.
How do you know?
Because I could feel it. I could feel the energy inside me. I didn't know what it was at the point. I really didn't know what it was. But it was kind of scary.
Okay. If you didn't know what it was, how did you find out what it was?
Because when I started telling everybody about my experience, everybody thought I was crazy except one person.
And the person who didn't think you were crazy said you left your body.
No, what she had studied metaphysics. And she told me I was being introduced to metaphysics because everything I told her was stuff she had studied and read about, and I had never studied or read about it.
Okay, the type of thing you're talking about when you say metaphysics isn't anything that's demonstrably real. There's nobody with any demonstrable expertise in it, and it's no different from the one person who didn't think you were crazy just making stuff up.
No, but metaphysics, the way we explain it, spiritual metaphysics is understanding life from the physical realm as well as the invisible realm.
What invisible realm, and how do you know it exists?
Because I was there. I've seen people that were there that had passed on to the next dimension.
But Pat, you said you didn't know what it was.
No, and when
somebody else told you what they thought it was, and now you're telling us that that's what it was. The thing is, we're not convinced by that person who told you that what you experienced was a metaphysical realm?
Well, when she told me that they were gifts of the Spirit, and when she also said that because she had studied the life of Jesus, that these were some of the gifts that he had. And
I was told not to go swimming until 30 minutes after I ate. Does that make it? Does that make it true?
No. But the stuff that I saw was undeniable.
Okay. I mean, we could prove you wrong by just denying it right now, but that won't make for a very good conversation. It clearly is deniable because it's just your word over everybody else's, except for those occasional people who have reached the same conclusion as you. You know, I mean, the only evidence you've got, Pat, the only evidence you've given us for why we should take what you're saying seriously as, you know, as representative of some real metaphysical realm is because this other person told you so.
Well, I proved it in my own life.
Okay, how can somebody else prove it?
No.
How can somebody else?
If you're willing to do the work, you have to do the work.
I understand. I'm asking, what process can somebody go through to prove this? And if it's demonstrable, why is it that you and a couple other people have managed to do this and nobody's won a Nobel Prize for this?
Because, you know, a lot of people are spiritually lazy when it comes down to doing the work. They'd rather take somebody else's word for what's true instead of searching out for themselves.
Okay, you don't know how science works. Do you realize that grad students all across the world would love to find a method to demonstrate the thing that you're talking about, because it would instantly catapult them from grad student to world-famous Nobel Prize-winning, world-changing scientist?
You know what? Well, I give an experience. I mean, I'll tell you what to do. It's up to the person to do it, to reach that part of science. In fact, you do it, and let's talk next week when you come back on.
Sure, but let me tell you, if it involves holding a mirror under running water and being tied, okay, because that's been done before. Go ahead.
Just go get into a quiet place and sit quietly and do deep breathing, slowly and rhythmically.
Do I need a bag?
No. And as you're breathing, just ask yourself, who am I?
Okay.
And it may take a while. It may take a half an hour. It may take an hour. It may take 2 hours, but I guarantee you, if you ask yourself, who am I, long enough, you will get an experience that you've never experienced in your life.
Okay, let me ask you this, Pat.
Okay.
How do I know that this experience is anything that ties to reality? Because when I ask this question, who am I, if I sit there long enough and, you know, reach whatever state it is, I don't necessarily know that what I'm receiving is real. And if Jeff does it, he's likely to get a different answer because his question, who am I, involves Jeff. So there can be no correlation between different people's experiences in this.
I understand.
Okay, so that's not anything that we could scientifically demonstrate.
But let me tell you, because I did this, the first time I did it, it took me about 3 hours because I was determined to sit there until I heard something, because I was listening to a regular traditional religious station, and the minister said do this, and he said you would hear that you're a child of God and you're loved and beauty and all this stuff.
And you don't think that your determination, you don't think that your determination to sit there until you heard something had any effect on the results that you got?
No, well, yeah, I think so, because I sat there because I was determined I was going to see if he knew what he was talking about. But what I got was something totally different. And it changed my life from traditional religion, even though I'm a Christian, but it changed my ideas of traditional religion.
So you got something that's totally different, and you take that as confirmation. So if we're in the laboratory...
You intentionally...
What actually happened at the crucifixion.
Pat, you sat there, and you performed this exercise that is not how you normally, you know, go about your daily life. You breathed deeply, and you kept at it until you had a strange experience, and then you have assumed that that meant something. And the thing is, you're getting ahead of yourself. You're getting ahead of yourself. I mean...
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I just get so excited. Go ahead.
You know, I've done when I was a little kid and an idiot, and it was a stupid thing that kids in my high school were doing.
No,
Let me finish. When it was a stupid thing kids in my high school were doing, I was doing deep breathing and then getting kind of dizzy and falling over. And that's actually a dangerous, stupid thing to do, but that was an experience unlike any I had ever had. And if I had been in the state of mind that and I was looking for some kind of sense of a supernatural thing, I easily could have jumped to the conclusion that that's what I got.
And similarly,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and similarly, we've done tests. There are scientists doing tests right now by stimulating portions of the brain that give people experiences that they universally declare are divine. And by the way, you could take hallucinogenic drugs and other drugs, you know, salvia, LSD, whatever, that would produce an experience that is unlike any other, that many people liken to divine experiences. My point is that this is the type of thing that you should expect to happen when you mess with your brain, which, by the way, deep breathing is going to do, and when you train your brain to expect a particular result, which is exactly what you're doing. So what I'm asking is, you have offered nothing to demonstrate that what you experienced maps to anything real. Is it not true that it could still just be a product of your brain?
No, because the brain in of itself doesn't work without this energy, which we call soul.
Okay, no.
What energy? What energy are we talking about?
Now you've just gone and made a circular argument.
No, okay. What I'm trying to say is, this is the way I solved the crucifixion. What actually happened at the crucifixion because of the experience that I had. I've solved. In fact, I've just written a book about it.
Well, I'm glad that you saw it, but and I'll sit down and do some deep breathing, and maybe we can talk about it again. But you'll have to, unfortunately, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, unfortunately, you'll have to put me in the category of people who do think that you're crazy. Not crazy across the board.
Matt, listen.
Not crazy across the board. I don't think you're nuts. I don't think you need to be locked up. I'm saying that on this subject, you've had experiences, and I don't doubt that you had experiences. I'll take you at your word for that. The problem is that you cannot tie those experiences to reality. People have hallucinations.
A lot of things, you can't prove a lot of things in reality, but they still exist.
Yes, no.
Yeah.
The things that we can demonstrate in reality are the things that exist. That's it.
And they're the things, and they are, and Pat,
I can't demonstrate error?
No, you can't.
Have you never blown up a balloon?
You can't prove that it's there. You can prove the
Pat,
outcome because we're living.
Pat, you don't have to see it to demonstrate it.
But you have to see God know they exist.
Pat, seeing something is not the only way to demonstrate it. And by the way, we can not only witness the effects of air, but you can see what's in air, and you've never blown up a balloon. That is an actual tactile demonstration that air exists.
Well, have you ever thought about when you walk, when you die, you don't walk anymore, but when your spirit is inside you, you can walk and talk and breathe and do all that stuff? Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah. I have thought about that, and what I discovered in thinking and researching that is that medical science understands how it is that our bodies can get up and walk around, and it has nothing to do with invisible spooks.
Well, I brought two people out of comas when the doctor said they weren't going to come out because of my understanding of the astral world, because I travel on astral travel before.
You have documentation of this?
Why didn't you collect $1 million from the James Randi Educational Foundation?
Yeah, James Randi has $1 million for you if you can prove that any of this crap is true. I've had just about enough of this, Pat. When the moment you can prove that any of this stuff that you're telling us about is actually true and not just the product of your lurid imagination, that's the point when you can write a book about it and not be just ripping people off by selling them your imaginings and calling it real.
Never died on the cross to save anybody from anything.
Excuse me?
Yeah, he never died on the cross. And there's a principle. See, if you understand principles of life,
this is according to your fantasy that you had of seeing the sea.
You can be out of your body and come
what
back.
Is wrong with you?
Pat, we're done.
Why?
Because
you're a loon.
You don't want to understand.
Look, we've been very patient with you. We've been very patient with you, Pat, to give us a
spent a lot of time trying to really understand realities. And if you read in Ecclesiastes, it tells you just like it's a principle. Like if you have a baby,
hey, you know what? Captain Kirk asked why God needed a starship. You're done.
Wow.
We just don't want to understand
clearly. We were very patient with you, Pat. We gave you all the time in the world to give us a single reason why we should take the stuff you were telling us seriously.
And instead of actually offering or attempting to understand, all you did was jump from well, I witnessed the crucifixion, and come on now, who's not going to think you're like crazy when you start saying stuff like that? And the only evidence is that you experienced
And
it.
then I actually called her a loon, which, you know, I'll admit, there's a possibility that I'm wrong. There's a possibility that Pat's not a loon, but I'm going with my you know, carefully calculated reaction to the way that she presented herself.
Yeah,
You
there's
know,
a very
I mean,
good chance that Pat is accurate and has accurate information, and everything that she experiences is real and maps to reality.
Yeah.
And there's also a chance that the schizophrenics and people who hallucinate are actually seeing a realm that you and I can't actually see, or
Right.
at least I can't see. I don't know what you can see. But until it's demonstrated, there's no reason for anybody else to believe it.
Right.
And we are actually rationally justified in disregarding your anecdotal, testimonial, personal experiences.
Yeah, and not just us, but I mean, what really got me is she's written a book.
Yeah.
So she is going to take money from other people on the basis
It may
of
be a free
her fantasies.
It may be a free book, a free ebook. We don't know.
Okay.
But if you are taking money for this, you should feel pretty.
You're an
crappy about
irresponsible kook if you're taking money for it.
that. But that's all right. We'll move on. We got Aaron in Indianapolis, I guess.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Just to be clear from the outset, I am an atheist. I've read, I don't know how many books against the existence of God and about evolution and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And something really funny happened. Like about a week ago, I was at a birthday party, and the father-in-law of the little boy. A grandfather of the boy who was turning 4. Anyway, he was given a prayer, and he prayed to our Heavenly Father to bless the food and stuff. And it was like, I knew it wasn't based on anything real, but I still had this warm feeling go through my heart like I would back when I was a Christian.
Sure.
So it's like it was a conditioned response, or maybe I was empathizing with what they felt or something. Like,
yeah.
Do you guys still feel that? I mean, did you go through a period where you still felt things like that, or do you, like, go into a church and have the same feelings and then know it's not real?
For me, well, go ahead.
But I never got that any more from church than I did from, say, music that I liked a lot, for example.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me, it was the discovery of what Jeff just said, because having had those types of feelings in prayer or in church while everybody's in song and things like that, and then discovering that I got those same or similar, had those similar experiences from listening to secular music that the church would be opposed to, and from watching movies and stories. And Beth is here, and she can tell you that there are lots of things that will make me teary and give me an experience just because they're beautiful, and just because, I am empathizing with other people. I'm not some misanthropic cynic. I care about other people. And so depending on, and words have power, not in and of themselves. It's not, these abstract, but our usage of language can be incredibly powerful. And that's what I think preachers tap into. That's what statesmen tap into. It's the reason why we have people that we like to listen to, because they speak to us not on some other metaphysical level, but they speak to us in a way that really connects significantly. And that can happen whether you're in prayer or whether you're just in a casual discussion. It's all about being human and connecting with other humans.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny because as the guy was giving the prayer, it was like I thought that I should feel nothing. So when that started to happen, my logical mind was going, "Stop! It's not real! It's not real!" So I don't know. Maybe that was an irrational reaction, but I didn't want to just
I think being
I don't know why that happened.
I think being conscious of what's going on is healthy for learning. I mean, I wouldn't be so hard on yourself. You felt something. Good for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Enjoy the feelings, but, when you're deciding what is actually real and what's not, then, think about all the implications and not just your feelings.
Right. I wasn't thinking. I mean, it just kind of struck me that it sort of reminded me that religious belief is kind of in a different part of the brain than the purely logical part, and maybe, I don't know. Never mind.
Well, I think when you start talking about parts of the brain, it might be a mistake. I mean, there are certain areas that we know contribute to different things, but religion, movies, music, all art and entertainment, those things are trying to tap into all the parts of the brain that respond to that sort of thing. And good art and successful art is the one that taps into it the best. And I think one of the reasons that religion has continued to persist is because it not only offers people this hope, this false hope, that, as I would say, but it gives them the emotional experience and the camaraderie and the fellowship that we all, or most of us, tend to enjoy.
Okay. I think that'll... Well, thanks.
Cool. Thanks, Aaron.
Yep.
Do you have something to add on that?
Yeah, I think I'm especially this issue of art versus religion is especially important to me because I'm an artist and I'm a game designer and I make my living, entertaining people with fantasy, and it's important to me that I do that responsibly and not take advantage of people and say, not only does this, this scene that I've drawn, evoke feelings in you, but it's actually true.
Yeah.
There's something really no, it's a picture, it's an idea, and so when I hear folks like Pat, who blurred that line, it really bugs me.
Yeah, and it's one thing. I mean, of course, anybody has the right to live by the dictates of their conscience, and we're not saying that you can't believe whatever your conscience dictates. It's just we'd prefer to live in a world where people are largely rational and would care more about whether or not their beliefs are true and how they go about demonstrating them.
So I agree that everybody has the right to believe what they want. Where I think they cross the line is when they take a thing they can't actually demonstrate as true and then market that.
Yeah.
That is not them individually believing what they believe.
Right.
That's them irresponsibly taking advantage of others.
Yeah.
And that's called fraud.
They become an advocate without justification, and
Yeah.
therefore they are subject and deserve
Right.
criticism.
Right. It's a fine point, but an important one.
So we get AJ in Philadelphia. How are you?
How you doing, Matt? I'm talking to you, aren't I?
That's Matt and Jeff, yeah.
Hey, actually, Jeff, I haven't heard about you, nothing personal, but Matt, my cousin of mine is a huge fan of yours, and he wanted me to give you a call and have a discussion with you about this particular topic. He's a hardcore atheist, if you will, and we've had many weeks and months of discussions about God and how I rationalize it. And I think I'm right. I think he's being short-sighted, and that's why I'm calling you now.
Are you admitting that you rationalize, or was that just his word for it?
No, he's saying I'm not being rational, or it doesn't make quite sense. He's saying it's circular in reasoning. And now let me explain to you my understanding of God. I think you're right, and I think science is right. When I say science, I mean Hawking or Dr. Docking, so on. The Grand Design, that book that just came out, saying that God isn't required to get involved in creation. I completely support that as someone who believes in a noble God, someone who, to me, a noble God is a God that is almost non-existent, because the same effect, the same manifestation of an unnoble God is equivalent to some God that doesn't even exist.
Sure, and Tracy did a whole series with invisible transcendent Dyson jars. The unknowable is indistinguishable from the non-existent.
Absolutely.
It is completely indistinguishable. So are you saying you believe in an unknowable God?
I say I do, yes.
If you acknowledge that what you believe in is indistinguishable from something that is not real, then you have to know that you can't make a distinction between it not being real and your believing. I mean, what is the justification for belief in the
excellent
unknowable?
question. I can answer that.
Okay.
The answer to that is I think that even though God is unknowable, he has that everything has happened by chance, but this chance is really purposeful, okay? So that God has guided humanity through the last, let's just say, 6,000 years. And I'm saying that because that's all we have recorded history of is 6,000 years. But he's guided humanity through manifestations that he sends to mankind to help guide so that we don't kill ourselves off the planet.
Okay, hang on. You started off by saying that you think that everything occurred by chance, but it's purposeful chance. Why do you think that?
I think that because of the founder of the religion that I'm referring to, which I'll just say religion next because I think that's not
sure, whatever.
the point here. The founder of that religion has stated very clearly that all the mentions, every religion that has ever mentioned God, referred to God, prayed to God, was actually referring to him. And that he's come now to unite all mankind.
So you're saying you believe it because somebody told you so?
I think he's credible enough for someone like me to accept.
Why do you think this individual is credible?
Well, because everything that even atheists are saying seems to correspond to everything he's laid out.
But I can make a list of 10 things, and 10 of them are right, and then, or 9 of them are right, and the 10th one's wrong. What you're doing is saying that here's somebody who's telling you something, and it seems to go along with everything you hear, and oh, by the way, in addition, he's telling you that he's the God that everybody else has talked about. Well, that claim is the only one that we're debating here, not anything else.
Okay.
It needs its own justification. The fact that other claims by this individual agree with other things are entirely irrelevant as to whether or not the claim that he is the God everybody else is talking about is true. And also, I can demonstrate that is necessarily false because there's not a God that everybody else is talking about. The ideas, the concepts of gods that exist in other religions are in many cases mutually exclusive, which means they cannot possibly be pointing to the same individual.
Well, he answers that question very specifically. He says the reason why they seem so different, Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, and so on, they appear different because the messages that they've brought, the way that they've described God has been dependent on our own personal understanding within a particular cultural context.
That's an ad hoc rationalization, and I don't care if he said it or who said it. It's irrelevant to proving the point that he is who he claims to be. How do you demonstrate that he is who he claims to be?
Well, he says his first most proof is his own self and his own claim.
That's not proof. Sorry, that's nothing. And by the way, you have identified an individual that you believe is an unknowable God. If there's not 2 contradictions in that sentence, I don't know. I've never heard him.
No, I'm saying he's the knowable component of something that's unknowable to begin with.
There is no knowable component of an unknowable.
He's just like you and I. You know, he
I agree.
He ate,
just
he
like
slept,
I
he
agree.
died, like a regular
I have no
person.
problem at all. I have no problem at all accepting that he's just like you and I, except that one of us is lying about whether or not we're a god.
Right, and I guess you'd have to say he's lying or not. And I think I have just as much right to say I do believe what he's saying as you do to say you don't.
You absolutely have as much right.
But what's your justification for believing it? Not your right. What reason do you have to believe that it's actually true?
What reason? My reason is his own self, his own person, his own claim, his own writings.
So there's a guy, he wrote some stuff, he made some claims, and that agree with everything else that you've seen, like even from atheists, except on this issue that there is an unknowable God. And you decided to just go ahead and believe it. Okay,
well,
that is your right. But there's nothing in there that really constitutes an argument for why it makes sense to believe it.
Here's an example, AJ. I'm gonna say 4 things. The universe is billions of years old. The sky appears blue due to the refraction of sunlight by our atmosphere. I shave off my head every week, and I'm God.
Well, then
I'd
have to either believe you or not.
And do you believe me?
No, I don't believe you.
Why don't you believe me?
Because you are not. I mean, are you trying to? What is your purpose? Are you trying to bring about unification of mankind and world peace, or what is? Do you have an ulterior purpose?
Sure. In some sense, I could say that I am in partly about the unification of mankind and world peace. But why don't you believe me? That's your answer had no relevance to my question.
No, you've just made a very spectacular claim. So let's see if you are true or not.
Are all people?
I would be willing to be a follower of you, but you need to show me how you can unite Muslims and Christians. How are you going to do that?
But AJ, I'd certainly agree that if there's a person who really wants to unite mankind and bring about world peace, and they're really doing it and seem to know what they're doing, that is a good reason to follow that person. How do you make the leap from that to they are a representative of this unknowable God?
Well,
how does that follow?
Thing? You're just using different words to describe the same thing. To follow somebody, you're putting your whole trust in them. That
follow equals worship?
I'm sorry?
So follow for you equals worship?
Yeah, yes, it does, because I don't believe in superstitious worship of religion.
Sure, and I'm not
altogether.
I think you do.
And I'm not actually bothered by that, whether you want to call it follow, worship, whatever. It's still not a demonstration that the individual is a god. You're talking about analyzing the efficacy of their plan for improving the species, and from that saying, yep, I believe their claim that there's a God.
He's not saying that there's two characters he's talking about.
Either.
There's the unknowable God.
Saying God is unknowable.
This guy's like a prophet, right?
Purposes.
Is this character's like a prophet that you're talking about?
Almost like not really a prophet, because he's not prophesizing anything. He's, but
there's the spokesperson, and then there's the God. And the God is unknowable, and then there's a spokesperson. And the spokesperson wants to bring about the unification of mankind and world peace and all that, which is a fine thing, but I don't see how you get from that to, therefore, you should believe him when he says that this otherwise unknowable God exists.
Well, no one else has really claimed that equivalent and really stuck through with
it. So what? Should the first person who claims anything just be believed?
Christians and Muslims and Hindus and whoever else.
But that's about us. That's about humanity. That's about changing the world. How do you get from that to there is an unknowable God? And what difference does this unknowable God make?
It doesn't. Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. It doesn't make a difference either.
Then why say that you believe it? You've admitted that you have no reason for believing it's true, and you've admitted that it's irrelevant. So why do you say that you believe it?
Well, because I want to be dedicated to bringing about unification of mankind.
And the only way you can do it, find some other guy. My recommendation is find some other guy who is interested in uniting humans and bringing about world peace, who does not ask you to also believe an additional thing that he can't prove and that is irrelevant.
Well, the reason why I don't want to do that is because that's not practical. There's Muslims and Christians who believe in God. You can't just take away their belief. Someone comes and says, hey, I'm representing that unknowable God. Believe in me. He's going to unify religious people.
Look, let me put it to you this way. First of all, you can liberate people from their religious beliefs. Jeff and I are walking, talking proof of that. Secondly, when I was a Christian, if somebody had come to me and said that they are proof of an unknowable God, okay, you're a crazy heretic.
Right.
Because not only is your
we're just talking about it two different ways.
Because not only is the claim logically contradictory and irrelevant, it directly contradicts the truth that at the time I thought I understood. That is not a pathway to liberating people from their Christian beliefs.
And the idea that just keeping the idea of a God in play makes it possible to unite people of different religions is nonsense, because a guy who is going to unite humanity and bring about world peace, but isn't the second coming of Jesus, is the very definition for a lot of Christians of Satan. I'm sorry, the Antichrist.
Yeah.
The Antichrist. So no, that is not a recipe for uniting everyone.
And lastly, AJ, if what you're really doing is trying to keep this concept of God alive, to use it as a tool, and you actually don't believe it and this God is irrelevant, then you are engaged in dishonesty and sophistry, and you are convincing people to give up their beliefs for bad reasons, and that's the worst thing you can possibly do, because we want people to give up their beliefs or to believe things for good reasons. because they already believe things for bad reasons. And when you convince somebody to, for example, get rid of their religious beliefs, and you do so for bad reasons, as you find in, for example, like the Zeitgeist movie and other things, when somebody comes along later and corrects that misinformation, they have now doubly reinforced their position. You don't want to lead people away with misinformation, because as soon as it's exposed as false, as soon as they begin to understand that what you're really claiming is logically contradictory, that what you're really claiming is irrelevant to the point, and that they have been duped again, you've lost.
I think there's a fine line between straight out lying and being tactful and using wisdom.
I
think best of luck to you. I don't think your method is going to work, to be honest. I mean, look
I
at
got
the past
5 years.
6,000 years.
I got 5 years of emails that prove you wrong, AJ. What do you got?
I have 160 years of transformation of individual human beings.
Oh, my aching ass! You don't have 160 years of nothing. You're what, 24, 25, maybe?
No, I'm not. I'm talking about the whole caboodle here, the whole thing here, from the beginning of this thing I'm talking about. But well, good luck. I mean, I guess I can just say good luck here, and maybe you'll succeed in bringing about these things you claim: unity of mankind and oneness of humanity.
We didn't actually say that was our job. I mean, we'd certainly like it to happen, but you know,
Yeah, right.
I work in the computer game industry. That's what I do. I make games for a living.
That is his job. So I think that makes him a little bit his claim better.
Not if he has to lie to do it.
Yeah. Anybody who's got to support their claim with "I am the representative and embodiment of an unknowable God" that everybody else has been referencing, they're selling you something. They're selling you snake oil. And I'm sorry that you can't see past that to actually see it. I realize that a lot of people seem to need this concept of a God in order to bolster their beliefs. I don't, and I'd like to encourage other people to get to a position where they don't, because we can keep the good and get rid of the bad. We can keep the good ideas wherever they come from, and there's no reason, as you noted, to actually believe the thing that you believe other than it makes you feel better.
Right. Well, yeah,
And
I think snake oil is a good analogy there, and I think that's why you guys need to do your work and without any interference, because there could be somebody out there trying to sell snake poison, and we got to be able to distinguish that.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks,
thanks for your time, guys.
Thanks for calling.
Yep.
We've got Deborah in Marysville. How are you?
Hi. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Good, Deborah.
Okay. I called because I've been enjoying your videos for the last week or so, and I'm a 56-year-old woman who became an atheist about a year and a half ago.
Oh, my.
And I just called up because I wanted to share my unborn-again experiences with you.
Please do.
I was a Christian. Well, the problem with being a Christian is once you leave the church, you're told that you never were a Christian. As far as I know, I was a Christian. I wasn't a very good Christian, but I believe that I, had some kind of a relationship with Christ, whatever that was. It wasn't much of a relationship, but I think there was something there, But now I think it's just my mind. But I remember the day that I became an atheist was April 19th, 2009. And I remember that day because it's my daughter's birthday, and I woke up. And this is after doing a lot of study on atheism and in Christianity, and I woke up one morning and I said, I don't believe in God anymore. It was just so natural not to believe in God. That was my first day of atheism, and it blew my mind that I was so nonchalant about it. After having been a believer for so long, and one of the things I became a universalist believer before I became atheist. And I used to study. I used to have horrible bouts of depression, suicide and suicidal thoughts and depression. And finally, when I gave up hellfire, I still was a Christian, but once I gave up hellfire, I no longer had depression. Now, I know people should go to the doctor when they think that when they're depressed, but I didn't. I just muddled through. Somehow I managed to keep my mind, Yeah. And I think it was probably because all this turmoil was going on inside of me, listening to what preachers say and knowing that it's not jiving with what I can see in real life, you know, and trying to make it work, and it just never did. And so for about 5 or 6 years now, I haven't had any depression. So I think it had to do with the hellfire and all that. But anyway, I just want to thank you guys for being there. And it was actually Bart Ehrman's book that convinced me that Christianity was bogus.
Yep.
So, you know, I really recommend his books and tapes and anything because he was a Christian too, and he gave up Christ after, you know, and I went back and read the Bible again, and I thought, my gosh, there's so much that doesn't mesh here, so many contradictory things and
stuff you'd read before and didn't recall it.
Well, because he says because you're reading it one book at a time. When you put the books all together and you look at it, maybe part of me thought some of this stuff doesn't make sense, but once I looked at it all at once, I said, well, how many women were at the tomb, and what day was Jesus crucified, you know, and rose from the dead, and what about all these zombies that came out of the grave and nobody seems to have said, you know, if you saw 500 people coming out of a grave, wouldn't you, there be a big newspaper report? You know, nobody reports on this stuff. A man rising from the dead, you know, and there's nothing. So,
well,
sorry. Go
no,
ahead.
that's all right. I was just going to say we really appreciate you calling in to share that. It's always good to hear from other people who have managed to free themselves from religion as well. And I agree with you on Bart Ehrman. I recommend his books quite often. So I'm actually, it's nice to hear. I mean, I don't know, you know, how it affected the rest of your life, but this idea that you have been depression-free and that it was a, you know, morning realization that was rather nonchalant, I think is important because I can't identify the day that I first identified as an atheist, but I do remember the period of time, and it was incredibly liberating, and I do agree that this hellfire and damnation stuff is not just a tool to keep people believing, but it's a particularly vile one because I think it promotes, it damages individuals' mental health and encourages things like depression.
Yeah, I agree totally because that's what happened to me, and I really believe it was hellfire all those years, even though I didn't identify it as hellfire, you know, that I was afraid. Because there was another thing about religion is the fear, you know, you can't live up to it. Nobody can do it, you know. I used to have fear because, gee, I'm not tithing, you know, or I sinned again. There I go cussing again. You know, now I think this is just normal stuff, you know. We do things that are wrong, and now I laugh at a lot of the things I do. Okay, so I can't stop cussing now, you know. I mean, I'm not even going to try anymore, you know. I can stop cussing when I'm in a, you know, with a group of people, and, you know, they kind of religious. I still have religious people in my family.
Yeah, it's one of the things of religion where many of them have gone to extreme lengths to make the normal, everyday actions of humans something that you should feel guilty for, whether it be sex or language or anything like that. And I find it so absolutely vile and hateful that it's one of the reasons that we do what we do.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it, so thank you very much.
Thanks for calling, Deborah. Appreciate it.
Okay. Bye.
We've got, as a reminder, and we've got Luke, but hang on a second. Luke, as a reminder, after the show is over, we get together and go to dinner at Threadgill's, 301 West Riverside Drive. And for those of you who missed the announcements earlier on, this is the last week of 90-minute shows for now. We're going to be shifting to hour-long shows. There will not be a show next week, October 3rd. We're being preempted by the Mormons, but October 10th, there will be a show. We'll be in the new studio, and it'll be an hour show. So the phone number will be
starting
changing.
at the same time?
Starting at the same time, I think. We can double-check. But, yes, starting at the same time. So it's 4:30 to 5:30, and there'll be a new phone number, so make sure you tune in the live stream for that if you're out of town or watch us live. But everything else is still the same. Luke, are you there?
Hey, yeah, I'm here.
Welcome to the show.
Hi, Luke.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I follow you guys a lot on YouTube and stuff, but really like you guys' show. It's great. I'm an atheist myself, and I debate with theists and agnostics and all that a lot, trying to just expand knowledge and make sure that my beliefs are tested and all that. I have a topic that I wanted to talk about today and see what your guys' thoughts on it are. All right. So people, humans, are everything is increasingly complex chemical reactions, right? The brain is just basically chemical reactions happening to create a consciousness. And I have trouble when I'm trying to debate with someone or trying to talk with a theist, getting over the fact that it can be just a chemical reaction that's creating a consciousness, and that's how we know what we know, that's how we think. And they always fall back on the thought of a soul and the thought of someone gave us this consciousness, and that's how our shell is, happens. I was wondering how you guys get over the fact that you have to, at some point, agree that your thoughts are just chemical reactions in your brain happening.
How do we get over that fact? You mean how we defend it in an argument, or how we live with it?
I guess how you live with it, and
it's not a problem for me.
I guess how you could see someone else. You know what I mean? Like when somebody else has to get over the fact that, and I guess it's get over the fact, just live with the fact that there is a margin of error. You could just, everything in life could just be neurons firing. That's it. It could be all simulated. It could be the Matrix, quote unquote.
Oh,
correct?
Yeah, that's the one thing. That's the one thing I admit to taking on faith, is that the universe actually exists and is not just a illusion put on for my benefit. I know I can't prove that, but I'm comfortable assuming that that's not the case, because otherwise I'd have no basis for caring about anything if it was all just an illusion.
If you're kind of addressing going from the position of believing that you have some kind of soul to the position of accepting that you don't, how do you deal with that? To me, it's kind of like if you lived your whole life and somebody told you that you had an invisible third arm, and then you realize that you don't have an invisible third arm. That's just the way it is. I mean, it's like being disappointed that you didn't win the lottery.
Right.
Yeah. All right, I get it. I mean, I understand what you guys are saying. I was just wondering what you guys' thought on the whole. Like, how can you trust what you're thinking if you are a slave to chemical reactions in your brain?
Let's suppose that our consciousness was some kind of supernatural, spooky thing that it takes over our bodies and makes us dance around. I mean, how is that any better? How come some invisible, spooky thing is so much more trustworthy than chemical reactions?
I understand. I understand that a theist would say it's because your soul is manipulated by this benevolent, awesome being, which obviously I don't believe that it's benevolent.
A benevolent, awesome being could do all. I mean, but a benevolent thing could do all kinds of stuff to you for your own good, right? And it could still be a pack of lies.
Right.
Religion is all about lying to people for their own good.
Right.
I mean, you could be, in much the same way that you could be a brain in a vat or an individual in a matrix, you could be a soul in a soul testing environment by some. You haven't avoided the problem at all.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that is just sidestepping a little bit. Thanks, guys, for your time. I didn't want to run up too much, but yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Luke. I will do my normal, or my new normal, quick take on why the soul, as it's generally portrayed, is an utterly untenable hypothesis. And it's because everything that we know about who we are is limited and identifiable in the brain. And the research that we've been doing, if you look up V.S. Ramachandran, for example, there's the good example of the split brain patients, where they develop two entirely different personalities, one being an atheist, one being a Christian. They have different likes. They communicate differently. So when that happens, when we split that brain, did we split a soul in half? Did we create a new soul? And the math of that soul doesn't work out. Also, brains have been reset by trauma. to where they have an utterly different personality. If somebody was saved and then they suffer some dramatic trauma, are they now unsaved? Or, you know, it's absurd. When everything we know about who we are dies when we die. Nobody's ever demonstrated anything that would even lead one to suspect that there's, you know, a part of us that continues. And by the way, if it's just a part of us, it's not us. My brain is the producer of my, you know, who I am, my personality, my likes, my preferences, etc. You know, how much of me could possibly survive if we know that this, you know, physical process is actually creating that?
Well, I'm a transhumanist, so I kind of disagree with you. I think that if you can duplicate the process that is going on inside my brain perfectly, then you've exactly duplicated me.
And I would agree that
that's
you've
a whole
exactly
separate,
duplicated me.
that's a whole separate
but it's
discussion.
not me.
Yeah, I think it is.
Anyway.
Depends on what you want to identify with.
Yeah. Anyway, we're way off topic there, Luke.
That's cool. No, that's basically what I was wanting to talk about anyway.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Sure. Thanks for the call. As a reminder, you can put that thing back up that Frank's shown twice real quick. We won.
Yay.
The Atheist Experience was voted by our viewers, by the public in general, as the best public access TV show in Austin by the Austin Chronicle. And so we wanted to thank everybody for that. There's the banner we got for it. We're going to leave it down here at the studio. And we'll show it probably from time to time while we gloat over the fact that we absolutely rock. But thanks everybody who voted. I appreciate it. There's a lot of work that goes into the show, and most of it is not done by me. The co-hosts do more work than I do, and the people behind the scenes who do the setup and keep the show alive do much more work than I do. So I was really happy that the producers went down to pick up that award, because they are a huge part of what makes this show the best. We are the best. Take that, Alex Jones. We've got Ed here in Austin. How are you, Ed?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good.
Well, I was going to talk about my own personal experience with pain management and the relaxation protocol, and apply it to something that Pat was talking about, her spiritual experience when she meditated. Mm-hmm. But I believe that I've personally experienced, going in myself, in my mind, my body, and actually helping myself, relieving myself of pain, and through relaxation. There's very little difference between what I think people are talking about when they say relaxation and when they say meditation. The relaxation, people just don't like the religious connotations that go along with meditation, is basically what it is. But scientists are, and the medical profession are, somewhat reluctantly in some sense, in the Western sense, but they are starting to look at this type of how our mind can help our bodies overcome illness and pain and discomfort and stuff like that.
Sure, and we've looked at hypnosis, for example, as, anesthetic or other things like that.
Right.
Yeah,
and I really thought that, just a couple of points real quick. Yeah. I thought Jeff said something very interesting a minute ago about the spooky powers, and that how is the idea of this spooky thing out there more comforting than the idea of a chemical reaction in our body. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really interesting point. I mean, I agree with you guys on some stuff, but we're different as day and night for the most part. But I think that's very interesting. I think we're at the dawning of a new age, paradigm-shifting thing going on, and I don't believe very much. I think a theory that I have is that things are changing, and that what used to be comforting, this idea that there's a God or that there's this spiritual realm, used to be a comforting thing. And I think our thought process, the human thought process, has evolved to a point where it's becoming not as comforting. It's becoming less comforting. The idea that there's a God is becoming really scary. And the idea that there's not a God is looking more like a comfort zone for a lot of folks. That's my personal theory about that.
Yeah, we're different as night and day, because I have no fear of the idea that there is a God, and I'm not an atheist because it brings me comfort.
Yeah, well, I would expect you to say that. I called in one time and argued with you about the placebo effect, and that they've documented how taking placebos and people being misled, the misinformation, or the misleading element of the placebo effect actually has healing benefits for people. And you pretended like I was saying that the placebo, the actual sugar pill was turned into medicine, which is not what I was saying at all. I was just saying that if somehow belief was helping people, shouldn't we look into that, and should we just not be so quick? I say we very generously. Shouldn't you be not so quick to debunk belief as a possible something that humans can maybe use? I think you do.
I'm perfectly familiar with the placebo effect, and I'm also aware that people are actually doing studies on how much the brain can affect. I mean, if the brain is my pain sensor, there are certain things that it is reasonably possible for the brain to do. It's the one that triggers the release of antibodies and all of the things in my body. So it's certainly plausible that there may be mechanisms like that, and the placebo effect demonstrates it. I'm not disregarding that at all. I'm saying
you did when I called, but now you're saying something different. By the way, you still owe me a steak dinner.
I doubt that, but
you do. You admitted that you said you'd give me a McDonald's Happy Meal. But I gave a perfectly good example of one benefit that religion has provided that a secular source could not provide for human beings.
And what was that?
A perfectly good example, and it was talking to you and Jeff.
And what was
Jeff made this incredibly asinine point that because religious people were in prison, that proved religion didn't make people good. First of all, that's not scientific at all.
Would you care to repeat?
What I was saying, because I wasn't saying religion made people good. I was saying,
Would you care to repeat the thing
idea, the belief that people have in an all-seeing, all-knowing God that will send them to hell had a behavior modification effect that couldn't be provided by a secular source.
Sure it can.
What?
It can be provided by any fear source. It can also, by the way, we can modify people's behavior for good without the fear.
Yeah, look at European.
You admitted that fear, the religious fear, had benefits. You admitted that. But what your point was that the criminal justice society could somehow replace this idea of an all-seeing God.
No, not the criminal justice society, which I will admit that the idea that laws exist and are enforceable is also one way to modify behavior. My challenge was to identify something that a religious thing could achieve by virtue of it being true that could not also be achieved by secular means. And for the second time, you've called in to say the same thing, which is demonstrably false, that religion is the only source for modifying behavior for positive. That's not true.
That's not what I said.
That's what you have to.
Benefit. You said provide a private example of one benefit.
One benefit.
Finish what you said.
One benefit that can only be provided by religions and not by secular sources. That is the challenge. That's something that can only be achieved by religion. I'm sorry I didn't phrase it as only by religion. Instead I said that religions can do that secular can't. But when you put that dichotomy together, you get that can only be produced by religion. You haven't met the challenge, and you haven't met it twice. Justin in Canada, how are you?
Hey, what's up?
Nothing. What you doing?
Just sitting at home watching TV.
We're watching TV too.
Nice.
We're just seeing us though on the monitor. It's not that exciting.
I'm just stating up front right now. I am completely religious. I'm a full-out Christian. And I believe this way. Because it was a vision that me and my whole family saw. It was at last year's Easter, and it was really weird. It creeps me out. We were all sitting in the same room, and we were just talking, celebrating Easter together, and we had a bright light glow in the doorway, and I swear to you, a man walked illuminated by a gold light and said, "Son, I just lost the game. You're a fat nigger. Fuck you, Dave."
Nice.
Well, that's a terrible way to end the show. Thanks, everybody, for participating. I completely forgot and lost track of time. We will not be here next week. We'll be here in 2 weeks in the new studio for an hour. Sorry. And our voters guide's got 60 responses so far. Keep contacting the people we sent it out to, and check the website for more information.